Let's begin with some serious news. The war in Ukraine. President Trump says he's pushing for a face-to-face meeting between Russian President Vladimir Putin and Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy. President Trump called yesterday's meeting with Zelenskyy and other European leaders at the White House a success, and he's leaning into his relationship with Putin in order to arrange the next round of critical talks. This morning, the president discussed a potential bilateral during an interview with Fox News. Listen to this.
I hope President Putin is going to be good. And if he's not, it's going to be a rough situation. And I hope that President Zelenskyy will do what he has to do. He has to show some flexibility also.
All right, for more on this, let's go to CBS News White House reporter Aaron Navarro. Aaron, the president is saying these potential meetings could happen very soon. And he's saying that based off of his call with Vladimir Putin.
That's right, Vlad. President Trump said this morning he's still working on facilitating that meeting, but did not say a specific date. At one point, he said that Russia and Ukraine are going to be the one to, quote, call the shots. President Trump added that if that happens and goes well, he would join them for a trilateral meeting to, quote, wrap it up. There is a sense that President Trump does believe there is some momentum after that call with Russian President Putin. During a hot mic moment when he was talking to French President Emmanuel Macron, President Trump said, quote, I think he wants to make a deal for me, as crazy as it sounds. Putin and Zelenskyy have not met in person since 2019, years before that Russian invasion began. President Zelenskyy said he is open to any format for a meeting, but that it should be among the country's leaders. And the latest that we're hearing from the Kremlin is that they will say, quote, high-level talks will happen, but that a meeting between the heads of state, Putin and Zelenskyy, quote, must be prepared very carefully, signaling that there could be a delay in this crucial bilateral meeting that President Trump wants to happen sooner rather than later.
All right. The president also says the U.S. will help coordinate security guarantees for Ukraine. That's critical. What do we know about that?
Yeah, that was a key topic from the discussions with Zelenskyy and European leaders yesterday. President Trump said this morning that the United Kingdom, France, and Germany will be the ones that have actual boots on the ground, to quote, front-loaded, and that the U.S. could provide assistance when it comes to air defense, but that there would be no U.S. troops on the ground. At the same time, he said that if there is a larger peace deal, he doesn't think that those defenses would be actually used. Take a listen to President Trump's phoner interview this morning.
When it comes to security, they're willing to put people on the ground. We're willing to help them with things, especially probably if you talk about by air, because nobody has the kind of stuff we have. Really, they don't have. But I don't think it's going to be a problem. I think if a deal is made, famous last words, right? But I think if a deal is made, I think Russia's had it. They've all had it. And for a very extended period of time, I don't think there'll be a problem.
President Trump reiterated that Ukraine can never join NATO because then Russia, quote, would have an enemy on their border. Zelenskyy said that today they will continue to work with European leaders to get to the specific content of those security guarantees.
All right, Aaron Navarro at the White House for us. Aaron, thank you.
Take care.
For a look at international reaction, let's bring in CBS News foreign correspondent Ramy Inocencio. He's joining us from our London newsroom. Ramy, good morning. Good to see you. So what kind of reaction are we hearing after those European leaders attended that meeting?
Yeah, Vlad, I got to say that when you deal with President Trump, you never really quite know what you're going to get, right? Whether it's acrimony in response or whether it's acceptance. But perhaps it's a surprise that there was actually some positivity coming out of yesterday's talks. And today, there very much appears to be momentum, not one, but two separate rounds of conferences, video conferences among European leaders, basically a kind of debrief about what went on at the White House. The first, you can see there, was with the so-called Coalition of the Willing, chaired by British Prime Minister Keir Starmer, French President Emmanuel Macron, looking right there, with more than 30 international leaders. Now, the crux of this, Vlad, revolved around those possible security guarantees for Ukraine, and that basically that there is some kind of movement. The idea is that European countries would now engage with their U.S. counterparts on this over the coming days. President Trump has said on Truth Social that this would actually be in coordination, that's a quote, in coordination with the U.S., which should be welcomed by Kyiv, along with European allies. Another bullet point is that European leaders will push ahead on talk for a possible reassurance force, some kind of military presence on the ground in Ukraine if the war ended. Trump has said that that shouldn't mean U.S. boots on the ground, but France, Germany, and the U.K., they are willing. And then a third point is that they also talked about applying even more pressure on Putin. That includes more sanctions, they say, until he shows he's ready to take serious action. So what we're seeing here is more talking, a lot of talking. It feels like there's some kind of re-energization trying to push this peace process forward, something that we haven't seen in the likes for months.
And Ramy, what have we been hearing from the Kremlin about the possibility of a trilateral meeting?
Yeah, well, you know, before we get to the trilateral, we have to get through the bilateral, right, between Zelenskyy and Putin. We are hearing at least possible places that are being talked about. Geneva has raised their hand and said we can possibly hold this bilateral meeting, this bilateral summit. But there is also talk out there that perhaps President Putin doesn't want to be in Europe, in Switzerland, potentially in a country that might be a little bit more of an ally, or at least more neutral ground, perhaps Turkey, perhaps someplace in the Middle East. But let's say we do get through that bilateral meeting and the trilateral does happen. Well, it turns out that the Kremlin actually hasn't said anything, hasn't confirmed anything. Russia's foreign minister, Sergei Lavrov, just this morning only talked about the Trump-Putin summit, which now was a few days ago. He said that that was very good. He said that it's clear the U.S. wants a sustainable result. But he threw the Europeans basically under the bus and insisted if they had their way that they would just keep supplying weapons to Ukraine. So to sum this all up, there's a lot of talk, a lot of movement here. And then over the next day or a few days, we'll see if U.S. engagement yields any kind of result.
Yeah, we'll be watching. Ramy Inocencio, thank you.